It's the 2nd of October and week 6 of the series. Doing my first VO2 max session today, so doing a bit of a ride beforehand with a friend, going for a ride with him for a couple of hours. Heart rate seems a bit more under control than it was last week after the rest day. After your rest day, your heart rate kind of shoots up. Weather looks a bit more tentative tomorrow, so I'd rather get the session done today. We are about 2 hours 20 minutes into the ride. I did about an hour by myself, then met up with an old friend that I used to play rugby with and did an hour with him, and then just cycled to the bottom of a climb now where I'm gonna start my interval session. So it's this first VO2 max session of the block, so 30-30s and then 4x4 minutes, and I think it's best to decide to do it on this hill rather than going all the way back to my normal interval road, because 2 hours 20 minutes, it's decent chunk into a ride, but no, feeling all right. So crack on with intervals and see how they go. My 30-30s in the first two 4-minute efforts, and yeah, getting absolutely spanked by them, to be honest. Zone 2 is really fit at the moment, but obviously I haven't touched this higher end stuff, and yeah, it's really challenging. So good job we're working on this before Zwift Academy. Just finished the last effort, and yeah, managed to pace those last two a bit better, but still bloody hard work. Got caught in the rain at the end there, but made it back. Decent ride out. Looks like my camera's actually gone cloudy, so it's like trapped air behind the camera. It happened on my front facing camera a while back, so might try and get that fixed this week. If not, might need to get some new camera equipment like a GoPro or whatever. Camera's fixed, so it's actually the front one. And the back camera's alright as well.
Are you happy about
That's outside on the bike again. So get caught in the rain again, but yeah, we'll see. Some nice blue skies at the moment. Set the bike up on the trainer this morning, but decided to get out on the bike instead, and got caught in the rain for that first half an hour, but totally worth it when it's so lovely afterwards. Just 2.5 hours zone 2 there, and then got some more intervals tomorrow, so doing those max effort intervals, the 4x30 seconds, and then the 1 hour tempo after that, so we'll see how that goes. Second efforts, bit of a headwind on the section I'm doing it at, so it's not worried about the segment, worried about the power. So yeah, about a 10-minute loop rest in between each effort, so that's what I'm doing. More rep to go, and it better be a good one, because I kind of messed up the first 3 reps. First 2, didn't pace them correctly, and climb notification on the Wahoo came up, and then on that 3rd one just then didn't change to the lap screen, so I had no idea. I pressed lap twice, might have been 25 seconds. Annoying, to be honest. It's just like, we're learning. Hopefully this last one's decent. I know how to pace it, I think, so hopefully all goes right on this last one. Last one went alright. I actually figured out how to press the lap button on the Wahoo. Mainly my fault on those, why the other ones went wrong, to be honest. Just on my hour tempo, actually felt alright. I think it's 318 watts, but that's with descending where I'm coasting and stuff like that, so a lot more surgy than just holding constant power. But should have picked up a cheeky KOM on the way. Conditions aren't great. It was pretty windy, so even the bit where I was expecting a tailwind, I turned into it. It's like, bloody hell, there's headwind again. So yeah, it didn't feel easy in terms of conditions. been quite a lot of rain over the past few days, but able to get out when it's relatively dry. The roads are actually really dry, and that's because it's super fucking windy. It's actually pretty crazy today. Yeah, especially with 60 millimeter wheels. Like I'm just catch a gust of wind, and it's really testing myself to keep the bike stable. So yeah, I need to make sure I'm on my A game today for sure. It's bloody windy, I tell you that. Actually kind of bombed it on one of the descents, so I might have got the KOM there. Tried to get a KOM yesterday, but ended up doing the wrong loop for my hour tempo, so I was on pace for it, but ended up going the wrong way. Try and get that next week, but might have nabbed some crazy descent KOM there. Hi guys, so I'm actually going to do a bit of an analysis of my training for the past 6 weeks after taking my off season. So I'd noticed that there'd been a bit of an improvement in my Zone 2 endurance riding over the past few weeks, and I thought it'd be interesting to actually plot that on a graph and visualise it, I guess. So yeah, I took 2 weeks off, and then since then I've been just gradually building up the mileage. So I did 7 hours, 9 hours, 11 hours, 13 hours, 16 hours, and then 13 hours, because this was week 0, what I call week 0, and then week 1 to 5, which has all been plotted in the graph. Now these were typically all, so during that time it was all endurance riding, so all Zone 2 riding, and typically in the range of 1.5 to 3 hours. So I didn't have to mess around with the data too much, because each ride was pretty consistent in what was trying to be achieved there. So it wasn't like there was lots of outlier data points. These two sort of outlier points here, where the power's down, the heart rate's pretty typical. Those were, for example, that was during when I was in France, and I did the 2 really long rides, the 6-hour ride and the 4-hour ride back to back. So stuff like that. But other than that, you're seeing that the data points are sticking to a nice little trend line there. So what we've got here is just average power, the purple plot in the bottom, and then the plot above that is average heart rate. It's average heart rate times 2, just to get it on a similar scale to what my power's at. High 220s, 230 watts to around 265 watts, based on the trend line. Now that sounds amazing. Oh, 6 weeks you've plus 35 watts. It's not that simple really, because I'd had a 2-week off season of no training at the end of my athletic season, and then this has just been getting back to training, so going back to like my baseline fitness really, and now I'm sort of back to what my typical Zone 2 rides are, so that 250 to 260 watt range. So yeah, I'm not expecting to see a further increase in this trend line of the Zone 2 riding. It should plateau around this level. I think it's really important to not get too caught up with the data at this point, as I think I got a bit carried away in the last week. So the last week here in the plot, that was actually my deload week, so I dropped the hours down, but I kind of maintained. I'd seen a nice bump in the power the previous week, and I think it might have got in my head a little bit, and thinking, oh, my Zone 2 ride should be in the high 260s, when I should just be riding to feel. I feel like I might have pushed it a bit too much in that deload week. So even though the volume was down, because the intensity was still quite high, I didn't really get the recovery that I was looking for from that week. So it's very important to not get too caught up with the data now, because it could easily be the case that I'm chasing that. Oh, my Zone 2 should be steadily improving past then, but if I'm chasing numbers on my Zone 2 ride, I'm gonna sacrifice my long-term progress. So it's good to just step back. Okay, Zone 2 should be around 250 watts. I don't need to be riding 270 watts, even though I had some really nice Zone 2 rides where I felt great and I'm just riding 270. But that's also possibly from the fitness, the altitude gains from being at altitude in France during week 2 and week 3. So also have that to consider. But yeah, it was just nice to plot this, and because I'd noticed a steady increase in my Zone 2 riding, and putting the data to a graph that was true. Training Peaks have actually offered a month of free premium, so I don't normally have premium, but now I do for a month. So I've been using the features, and this kind of corroborates what I've been thinking with kind of maybe pushing it a bit too much too soon. So trying to dial it back in. like I said, with that deload week, carried a bit too much more fatigue than I wanted to. So this is my first week of training since my off season. So my off season was here. Basically took 2 full weeks off. So this was the first week back of training, and I'm going to focus on the fitness, fatigue, and form score. So yeah, still carried through some fitness. So we got mainly focused on the TSB score. So carried through some fitness through that week 1. So that first week of training, 7 hours on the bike. I was still in a positive TSB. Then I ramped in week 1. So this was then I did 9 hours on the bike. Kind of stabilised with my previous fitness from before the off season. So you see my TSB therefore is negative. Is just neutral. Moving on to an 11-hour week. That's when the fatigue from the training was more greater than the fitness that I had. So the fitness from before the off season, and then those past couple of weeks of training. So I know I'm getting back to my old fitness, so I can definitely cope with being in a negative. Well, you need to be in a negative TSB to progress over time, but you don't want that TSB to get too negative. So negative 16, that's a very manageable TSB. That was the first week in France, and I felt absolutely fine. Second week in France, it was a very strange training week with only 3 rides, but again the TSB nice and consistent, and negative 13, and that's very manageable progress, I'd say. So very steady progress, and that was a 13-hour week, but you see I didn't actually do much else that week. Then moving first week back home, this week I felt brilliant really. This was so week 4. This week I felt brilliant and the power was really good on the bike, but then you're seeing the TSB being negative 40. It's pretty high. So the fatigue from that week was more significant, was quite a lot greater than the fitness that I already had. Now the fitness score is calculated based on the previous 6 weeks, and at the start of those 6 weeks I have 2 weeks completely off. So yes, it's negative 40, but I've still got that a bit more of a base of fitness, I'd say. It's not super representative, but yeah, those were kind of could have been a warning sign of, okay, you might be pushing it too far. But yeah, like I said, I felt absolutely brilliant that week. But then and I thought, oh, we've got the rest week coming up anyway. But the issue with this rest week is maybe again I went, like I said, maybe I got a bit too caught up with the power numbers and pushed it a bit too hard. So negative 42 TSB for the week. So this was meant to be the recovery week, but the fatigue was quite a bit more significant than the fitness gains. A bit more evident that had been the case just based on my feel. So I tried to rail it back in. So on my zone 2 rides, I was making sure I wasn't I was not focusing on my numbers at all. Like it is what it is. Anything from 220 to 260 is absolutely fine for my zone 2, and I don't need to be stressing about it. So I was able to rail it back in a bit and get the TSB down to negative 28, which is good. Now there's also the fact to consider that I'm now introducing some sessions, so the VO2 max stuff, and then the max efforts and the tempo. That's going to be it might not even be reflected in it's going to be reflected in the TSS, but to varying degrees, and it might be the case that it takes more out of me than the TSS represents, especially the max efforts, where if you analyse the actual effort itself, it's nothing, and I'm pootling around for the rest of the time. So also need to be aware of that. So I think for the next few weeks I need to make sure that I'm really not overdoing it, because I am trying to increase my training volume, but I don't want to get into too negative with the TSB. I want to let my fitness catch up as I'm making the training harder. So yeah, but I think this sort of thing should be intuitive to me. I shouldn't need Training Peaks to be telling me this. I should just. I mean, I knew I was feeling a bit fatigued before premium was granted, but so I knew to rail it back in a little bit.
So you probably bury your head a little bit, your chin down a little bit more.
Yeah, or down up.
Morning guys, change of scenery today as I'm in the Lake District. Been up here for the weekend staying in Range Over Sands with my family because my uncle's 60th birthday, so we're celebrating that. But lovely day today, so getting out for 3 hours in the Lake District. This lake is mega, but the road's a bit wet and muddy, so caking the bike, but it's gonna happen, you know, so whatever. Look at that. That is just mega. Wow. Good ride to end the week, that.